Welcome to Mind Shifters Radio. Delighted that you're here. Today is Wednesday, April the 16th, and we are privileged once again to move into this conversation about first century Aramaic forgiveness. And delighted that you're here. Welcome, Natalie. Haven't seen you in a while. And we're going to rock and roll. We're moving into the codependence to interdependence power person dynamic worksheet. We're, I think, on our fourth day of that. So we are rocking forward, and I don't think we're going to quite get it finished today. If you haven't been with us, you might want to check out the previous, I'm not sure, 4 or 5 day shows where we have been talking about this power person dynamic and the messages that we take on and how to resolve these dynamics within the mind. Remembering that there's a faculty of the mind called the automatic decision system. And when that automatic decision system kicks in, it does whatever it does on its own. There's no need to think about it. There's nothing except action prompted by the mind. And sometimes the prompt is so strong when you if you don't know about this automatic decision system, you wonder what the heck's going on. But sometimes the prompt is so strong, it even goes totally and completely against your own will and choice. And bouncing back from the power person dynamic, the traumas involved in the power person dynamic takes time. It's a process. And most people, when they're lost or they're stuck in their trauma, I've shared a couple times. There's a gentleman that wrote a song way back in the early days at Heartland. He was the original musician at Heartland. He was Joel Goldstein, and he wrote a song. If you want to give it a listen, you can jump on YouTube, and it's "Stuck in My Story" by Joel Goldstein, and the melody line is "Stuck in my story, my pain and my glory." And when people are stuck in their story, it literally becomes an addiction. One of the things that I'm experiencing with people in doing the one-on-one quantum still point intensives, personal intensives, is that we're able to break that addiction to the story in carbon-based memory, the story that keeps playing out over and over and over again. And that's part of developing resilience, to be able to, rather than getting, being sucked into what the automatic decision system feeds up from the mind, sucked into the power person dynamic, to be able to have that, if there are any vestiges that left, to recognize it's just another piece of work to do, and becoming resilient to bounce back into that state of being. And of course, each of the tools is designed to help to create that resilience. The commitment, the reality prevention wake up sheet, it really awakens that state we call resilience. And I mentioned the other day, and I'm going to mention it again because it's just as I really was thinking about it and working with this worksheet. I've been doing some editing on it. And back last week, Gene and I watched two series on, actually, it was over, I guess, a period of a couple of weeks. We watched two series on TV. One was called 1883, the other was 1923. They're the precursors to the popular Yellowstone series. And as I was rewriting the worksheet and really thinking about this, or editing the worksheet for presentation today, uh, that if you've got the eyes to see and the ears to hear, you'll see in those two series a really dramatic picture of humanity crawling out of a giant hole of pain, of slime, of trauma, and unconsciousness. And the two together really portray people at all stages of their work. The person who's totally disconnected from being basically what we would call a sociopath, all the way up to the person who's trying but can't, and recognizing, that we're each in some stage of our own work, and where somebody else is at in their work, unless it impacts my life and it's my job to do something about it, it's none of my business where they are. But it really gives a powerful overview of what the work is, if one's ever going, the work that needs to be done, if one's ever going to truly live a conscious life. And recognizing, when you look at the mass, when you realize it's generations and generations and generations that need to be cleaned up, if one is isolated and on their own and does not recognize that there is help, it it can be so overwhelming. It's like it's hopeless, it's helpless, or it's hopeless, I'm helpless, if that was a power person dynamic in your life. And recognizing, one of the ideas that Yeshua delivered to us was this idea in Aramaic of what was called Rukha de. And Rukha de is in Aramaic a feminine elemental force that undoes the effects of errors and teaches us the truth. So there's a power in us that when we're willing to be out of our minds, when we can yield to it, that power will literally take over and process the unconscious energy. It's not as if we have to do it all on our own. And that power will then, by definition, Rukha de in Aramaic, and if you go back into the creation story in Aramaic, it doesn't say that the Creator sent out its spirit. It says the Creator sent out its breath. And you'll notice that people in trauma lock down and hold their breath. That's how we hold on to things. And so yielding literally every cell in your structure to the breath, to the willingness to let, and to the willingness to embrace everything that's in there. Doesn't matter whether it's the slime or whatever it is, the willingness to embrace it and recognize that this breath and this active presence of love that is delivered via the breath is the universal solvent. I'd like to use the example of, you know, water thousands of years through Grand Canyon, created the Grand Canyon, dissolved the rock. And you'll remember that way back in the scriptures, they talked about the hardness of the heart, that we had turned our hearts to stone. And it is the breath delivering the active presence of love into the cell that dissolves the rock, that is the universal solvent. And there's a particularly powerful piece of music that you might want to check out and breathe with, actually, especially if you've got a lot of stuff moving. And the song is entitled "Carry Me," and it's if you tap into it and you get into the energy of it, it can be seen as really truly this feminine elemental force that in Aramaic was called Rukha de, that undoes the effects of ours, teaches us the truth. This piece of music is appealing, is saying, the opening words in it, a teardrop falls into the ocean. I cannot live in this world, is the sentiment of the song. And so it's asking that power, saying, carry me, carry me. And it's just a beautiful, powerful piece of music. It's done by Peter Kater, Kater, and Snatam Kaur. I'm not sure if I'm pronouncing that correctly, but the woman that sings in that song is Snatamkaur. So the song is "Carry Me," Peter Kater and Snatam, Snatam Kaur. It's a powerful thing to breathe to and just really tap into that energy of yielding up, of releasing, of letting go, and being able to move through whatever one needs to move through. And then to yield oneself to gratitude, even in the midst of conflict, to choose to remember that there's a place in you that is the same as the place in me. In the invisible, indivisible world, we are an important part of each other, and it's appropriate to cherish each other in that state. And if I made errors, I can apologize for those errors. I can bring forward the presence of love to support me and assist me in healing those errors and teaching me the truth. The basic objective of tapping into that power that in Aramaic was called Rukha. So joining you in crawling out of that hole, if you've got any of that old stuff left, and maybe you're finished with your work, and that's nice. And we'll step into the reality management worksheet again. I'll just share, unfortunately, I have the same problem that I had yesterday where my controls will not allow me to go into the chat. And I see a couple of people put chats in, and I apologize. Jeannie, if you would, if anybody has anything important in the chat that we need to know on the show, beyond a greeting, if you would just let me know. And I cannot tap in callers, so we won't be taking any calls today. Gonna have to see what's going on with the app. So I'm going to step back into a couple of earlier steps in the worksheet. They're steps that we spoke about, but in reviewing, and I've been interacting with people and processing around what's been coming up as they've been listening to the show. And so I've done a little bit of editing. So I'm going to go back to step 14 in the worksheet. And if you're new to the show, I can't see who's on. So if you're new to the show, then please forgive the fact that or pardon the fact that I cannot access the comments or the call button. And we're going to go back and just review some of step 14 onward and move forward. We're working with the Power Person worksheet from our codependence to interdependence communication practicum. So in step 14, we point out that the worksheet that I'm doing, basically when one picks this worksheet up, they're starting out, they're in a present day situation where something that is more stressful than the average event they might do a worksheet over. Remembering that, when one becomes ultra stressed, what controls the mind of virtually every person on the planet, unless and until this power person dynamic is addressed and healed, what runs their lives is ultra stress. They'll do the behavior that their power person did to them that they hated the most. That just runs the whole world. And so when doing this worksheet, you're starting out with a proclamation of who you are. So if I were doing the worksheet, I'd be saying, I'm Michael, who am love. And that would be my starting point. And we've been working on identifying these power person dynamics, pardon me, and what I call the pseudo solutions of the non-being mind, the lies that our mind tells us. If I could just get angry enough, if I could just have enough power, if I could just, the mind's got a whole list. Actually, we laid out 15 of those in one of the earlier shows. The number one pseudo solution of the non-being mind being, if I could just figure this out. Well, I promise you're never going to figure it out, but you can forgive as to what's coming up in you in any given situation. So we're down to step 14 on the worksheet, and then recognizing that this worksheet is an echo of a power person event. In step 3, I named the person I was doing the worksheet around. I named myself in step 1, made the declaration of who I am as love, And then the subject of this worksheet that I named in step 3, I'm acknowledging that that person resonated for me an original power person dynamic. So the acknowledgement that that's there is part and parcel of the process. And to recognize that this is clearly an invitation, if I choose to see it as such, to surface and heal the unresolved aspects of this issue with my power person. So somebody gives me the look, I go into the ultra stress state and I want to just whatever, rage the way my power person raged at me, disappear the way my power person disappeared, whatever. Each time an event happens that brings that up, it's the opportunity to realize that, okay, the end result, a perceptual construct in my mind comes up, but I'm only looking at the very tip of the iceberg. And there's this giant iceberg under the surface called a power person dynamic. If I see the tip of an iceberg and I recognize that under it there is a power person dynamic, I'm what is under the surface is literally my physiological disease process. You know, if there is a disease in the mind, there is a disease in the body. If there is a disease in the body, there's a disease in the mind. There is no separation between them. Just like you can't take the head off of a coin and say, look, I've got a head and a tail. No, they are different aspects of one unit called a coin, different perspectives of one single thing. The mind and the body are simply flip sides of exactly the same energy field. A disease in one is a disease in the other. So if somebody resonates and the tip of the iceberg comes up and I'm in this power person dynamic, I want to recognize that this is my opportunity to process through that. So then I ask myself in step 14 the question, what emotions did this current event resonate in me? And what's the thought behind this emotion? So I'm looking at my emotional response to something, and then I'm going to go the next level of looking at the thought behind that. How is this emotion similar to what my mind generated and I experienced regarding my power person? You know, where does this all, how does this all tie together? So an example of that might be when Bill raged at me yesterday, I felt afraid and realized that my fear came from the thought I'm being belittled. So I've identified an emotion and I've identified the thought disorder behind the emotion. I now realize, so that's we're now halfway through this particular step in the worksheet. I realized that rage was there, I had fear, and I'm in touch with the thought that causes my fear. Now, there might be many different thoughts. It might be the thought I'm going to be hurt, or it might be the thought I'm going to be abandoned, or any number of thoughts. But in this case, we're just using this as an example. I'm being belittled. Now, how is that similar to the experience I had that developed into this power person dynamic? Oh, now I realize, well, I always felt small and weak around my power person. Got it. And why I felt like a kid and felt powerless around Bill yesterday. So my worksheet's on Bill. Bill raged at me. What this resonated for me is fear. I touched into the thought, oh, I'm being belittled. Now, how does that relate? We're asking you to relate that to the power person dynamic. And so in our example, this person realizes, oh, this this thought I'm being belittled and there's rage there is why I felt small and weak around my power person, and why just yesterday when Bill did that raging, I felt like a little kid. powerless. And, you know, when you realize that, the 10% that pokes up out of the water is the tip of the iceberg, 90% is below. Like this simple step, if you do this step effectively, you've probably just opened 24 or more worksheets, forgiveness processes that need to be done to free yourself of that energetic dynamic. So once again, this worksheet can be used like you use a mind shifter. It's designed to put you in touch with what's going on under the surface. And then once you've touched into your unconscious dynamics, remember the ancient scriptures, they said, take care of the heart, for out of it are the issues in life. They didn't say take care of the head. They didn't say get in your mind and see if you can figure it out. They didn't say take care of the other guy because they're the problem in your life. They said take care of your own heart. What is that word heart? That would be the unconscious. That would be the iceberg that's below the water that you can't see. And if you're seeing the 10% of it, there's the 90% under the surface. So you might see how, so what tools, using this step, as I've just reviewed it as a mind shifter, what tools would I use to heal in this regard? Well, I'm realizing there's fear, so I'm going to use forgiveness to apply to my fear. I've got this thought disorder that I'm being belittled. I might say, well, I think I'll turn that into a mind shifter. When people belittle me, I always stay connected to love and use that mind shifter to work through this thought disorder of being belittled. And then I felt small and weak around my power person. Well, that might be the place where I'm going to pick up the communication tools, the responsibility communication tools, and go to my power person or go to Bill or a representative of my power person. Or if I don't have anybody, I might just invite someone. If you've been to an intensive, you've seen us do this where somebody's got a power person dynamic that's going on. And so we'll ask, this person's ready to express and deal with it. So we'll ask, is somebody in the room willing to be the surrogate here, to be the space of playing the role of the power person so that that can be worked through. So you might find somebody who would support you with that. And and then having done that work, you might actually choose, okay, so now yesterday I was like this small, weak little kid, no power. I've worked through those dynamics and I'm ready to go talk to Bill face to face and stand in my power. And that's what I mean by there are going to be several worksheets to be done just out of this particular step of the power person worksheet. So that's step 14. And then step 15. What thoughts created the emotions that I identified from step 14 and where did I feel it? So there may be, if I go back and look at the dynamic with my power person, well, the emotion was fear. Gee, when I really tap into it, I remember this as I was doing the worksheet. I remember this time when it was actually terror. I remember a time when my power person asked me to do something and I was finished with it. And so it was indifference. And so there may be many different emotions. And so in step 15, we're going to invite you to do three things: to list the emotions that come out of this power person dynamic that you're working through. There's a space to put the name of the emotion, and then recognizing that emotions are reflections of thoughts. When we engage in mind energy, that mind energy literally becomes a neuropeptide. A molecule shows up in the body, lands on the cell, and inserts itself in the cell. On the way into that cell, that thought creates a warning signal, an emotion. And then to take it to the next level, you want to allow yourself to be aware of where in your structure you're feeling that. Oftentimes, people are so used to shutting down, to holding their breath, not feeling, not being in touch with it. They'll, like, for instance, and I say this from, this is my own projection. I go back to the early days of doing this work, the very earliest days. You've heard me speak about my friend Patrick McGann, who's a fellow naturopath and massage therapist. And he was the first person that I worked with as a massage therapist. I came out of the business world. I had three businesses. I had 60 employees. I worked 18 hours a day, 12 days a week. I mean, it was nonstop. And my body was like a rock. When he would work on me, he'd go to my shoulders and he would almost, I mean, this guy had powerful hands and he would almost cry. He was actually into karate. He was in, you know, a brown or a black belt in karate. And yet he'd almost cry at the pain in his hands from trying to work through the tightness in my muscles. He actually, when he got to my back, he actually created a whole new therapy that he'd never done before. And instead of having me on a massage table, he'd get me on the floor and he'd use his feet because he couldn't, it was just wrecking his hands. So we're inviting you to get in touch with and sense what's going on in your body, where the tensions are, where things are held. So the third step in each emotion that you identify is, I feel this in my, is it in your big toe? Is it in your neck? Is it in your shoulders? Is it in your gut? And as you build awareness in your body, what you'll find is you're able to take more of the presence of love into that tissue than you could when it was just unconscious and locked down. And again, the active presence of love is the solvent that dissolves whatever's locked in tissue. So being able to soften, breathe into it. Literally, if you remember from the intensive, remember one of the earlier workshop or radio shows we've done where we did a love exchange, doing a love exchange with your own organs, with your own muscles. You know, go into your heart, go into your lung, go into your colon, go into your big toe, wherever there is pain, and breathe into it and literally extend love into that tissue. Love is the solvent delivered by the breath that removes trauma from tissue. So then to step 16, power person. And again, I'm doing a little review because I've done some editing since we talked before. So power person behaviors generally involve an effort to do one of four things. And there may be some that I'm missing. If you have an idea on some that are missing, please, communicate that. But it can be broken down pretty much into four categories. One, to control. Two, to avoid. Three, to distract. And four, to project and deflect. Actually, distract, project. All right, I should actually change that. Just give me a second here. I'm going to put a dash in there. It's clear. So distraction, is projection. They're one and the same. So what you want to do in step 16 is identify any fear or hostility-based messages that your power person has given to you, or that you've given to you or to others in order to achieve one of these goals. Remember, we spoke earlier that every behavior is a communication. So with these behaviors, what, and you want to identify specifically what they are, what is it you're trying to achieve with it? So examples would be, an example of control would be forcing or threatening people into being silent. And that might look like, I'll leave you, I'll hit you, whatever, if you don't, whatever. So that would be an example of control. Avoidance, the kind of message that would go along with that would be, don't make me look. I don't want to deal with that. Just shut up. Don't say another word because I've locked that down in my unconscious. That's in the iceberg, and I'm not going to look no matter what you do. And boy, that one can blow the doors off of things. So the message might look like, if you just shut up, then I'd be okay. The third, distraction projection, that message might look like, you make me so mad. And then deflection. So again, there are four different basic behaviors that people set goals out of and replicate the power person dynamic: control, avoidance, distract, project, and deflect. So the distract project would be, you make me mad. You're the cause of what's happening inside of me. Classic denial. And then deflection might be, well, you just did that last week. So that would be, you know, I'm not going to look at this. I'll just talk about how you did it too. Well, okay, I'll tell you what. You know what? You're right. I did it too. But what we're doing right now is we're talking about what you did. So let's separate those two out, and I'll be happy when we're complete here. Or maybe if you want to, we could do it first, process through when I did it, but then instead of you deflecting and pretending you didn't or trying to get off the hook, it's time for you to own that you did it too. And so to end that. So what this step 16 does is it looks at those four, and those are the examples of it. And now what we're going to ask you to do in step 16A is detail how your power person went about achieving these goals when those goals were pointed at you. So we want to look at, you're looking down into the iceberg. When your power person wanted to control you, what was the behavior? What did they do? When your power person wanted to avoid, what did they do? Remember, the initial objective of the worksheet: become the thinker apart from the thought, the feeler apart from the feelings, the actor apart from the actions. So you want to step back and look at, these are the behaviors your power person did in order to give you the message that, one, they wanted to control you, they wanted to avoid what you were bringing up in them, they wanted to distract from what you were bringing up in them, or they wanted to deflect what you were bringing up in them. So you want to detail what behaviors your power person did in order to play this game with you. And then we're still in the same step. This is step B. How do you go about achieving these goals when you point them at somebody in your life, including yourself? You can do these behaviors with yourself too. So when you've looked at the example of it, you've detailed how your power person played that out with you. Now, how do you play that out with others? When you feel a need to be in control, what do? You want to become conscious of these things so that if they're things that don't really serve you, you can throw them away. If you don't know that you do them, if you can't acknowledge that you do them, then the automatic decision system, when they kick in, will simply knock you unconscious and it'll take over. So step C is recall a time when your power person conveyed, each of those messages and how it felt. When they conveyed the message, I want to control you, how did it feel? When they conveyed the message, I want to avoid you or avoid what you're bringing up in you, how did it feel? When they tried to distract or when they projected, when they tried to put it on you, how did you feel? Defining your own emotions here. And if they were deflecting, how did it feel? So that's a whole section in the worksheet that just can can just open up a monumental amount of work. And of course, with each piece of your own unconscious mind that you access, what tools are you going to use to clean it up? Are you willing to take on the generational patterns of your bloodline? And, we're not saying it's easy in any way, shape, or form. I actually was talking to a gentleman who's a therapist the other day, and he's been doing this work for about a year and pretty deeply. And he had gone through a quantum still point session about 3 months ago, and it was like this major turnaround in his life, major release from the addiction to trauma. And so the last several times I've talked to him, it's been kind of this thing where, well, yeah, I've got another piece of work to do, but it's not, oh my God, this horrible trauma is happening. It's just, yeah, here's another piece of work that I need to do. And when he stepped past that, when I spoke to him, it was just the day before yesterday, he was really looking. He actually, as a therapist, had been working with a psychiatrist and was on antidepressants. And he was wanting to get off of those antidepressants. So, with the cooperation from his psychiatrist, he dropped 25% of his antidepressants, anti-anxiety medication. And he said, I just felt like this surge of energy. And it was like, I felt so good when I got rid of that. It's like, I realized I'm going to get rid of all of this. But he said, then, it was just a day later and I got sick. It's like, wait a minute, what do you mean you got sick? Oh man, my lungs, I had all kinds of phlegm. I was coughing. I had this flu or the cold, or, it was really, really. Wait a minute. Let's take a step back here and take a look. Remember, we've said before, healing is not Dr. Feelgood. You're going to have results. You're going to have symptoms on the physical, mental, emotional level. Remember in the worksheet in step 2, I'm willing to go through the physical, mental, emotional symptoms of healing. What are the physical symptoms of healing? Any kind of symptom you've ever had in low energy. What are the mental symptoms of healing? Any kind of negative thought I've ever had in confusion. What are the emotional symptoms of healing? Any kind of negative feeling I've ever had in depression. And when does it happen? When I hit a new level of vitality. So he just finished telling me he had dropped these antipsychotic medications, anti-anxiety medications, and was feeling so much better. And then all of a sudden described himself as sick. It's like, well, I suggest you change your thinking. You're not sick. You're symptomatic. Absolutely. And your body is throwing off the toxicity, one, of your own states of mind that you're getting in touch with and cleaning out, and two, of the drug that you've been taking. Remember, ultimately, every drug is a disease disguised as a cure. No drug has ever cured anything. Can drugs shut down and hide things? Yes. Can you take someone who's in horrible depression and give them drugs? And, I feel pretty good. Yeah, well, half my brain's gone, but I feel pretty good. Take them off the medication, what happens? They're right back into what they have not yet resolved in their lives. This work is not about hiding symptoms from yourself. Anything that you do that creates more diseases is not a healing process. And you'll notice that they have listed on the insert of every package of drugs a whole list of diseases they cause. Now, they don't call them diseases, they call them side effects. They're not side effects, they're diseases. Now, that doesn't mean don't ever use a drug. Absolutely, a drug can save your life, but it can't heal anything. It can give you time to work through things, but it can't heal anything. So anyway, when he got rid of that, he went to this whole new level of vitality, and it was like, oh yeah, that's right, healing crisis. Oh yeah, so I got it now. And it was just like this whole turnaround in his thinking. Whereas he thought he had been sick, it's like, no, you're not. This isn't sick at all. Yes, you're symptomatic. Your body's throwing off what doesn't belong. Be prepared for that to happen at any stage in your work. And make sure that when you go into that healing process, you hold on to your cosmic grease, or go get another package of it. What is cosmic grease? Willingness. I'm willing to go back to step 2 in the worksheet. I'm willing to go through the physical, mental, emotional symptoms feeling. And some of the stuff you're going to clear out is stuff that happened 10, 20, 30 generations ago in your bloodline. And I'm talking physically, mentally, and emotionally. So make sure you hold on to the willingness. And when one goes into some of those old states and the old energies are being thrown out of tissue, coming up into awareness, part and parcel of those symptoms are behaviors. And the mind will counsel you to go back. Well, you're really feeling bad right now. It's okay. It's okay to, remember we used to have a drink to feel better. It's okay to go ahead and have a drink. No, no, thank you very much. I've chosen to say that alcohol is one of the most destructive energetic systems on the earth for human beings. It's just mind-boggling when you really see the damage. I mean, I forget what the number is, like something like over 3 million people last year died related to alcohol in the world. Something like 50% of the rapes in the country are alcohol related. Murders, crimes. I mean, it's just monumental. So when you're detoxing something, old feelings, old thoughts come up. Make sure you stay in willingness, you breathe, and you keep moving that energy, and that you refuse, you keep doing the right things rather than the things that your mind might counsel you to do. So then we're going to shift out of that section and go to step 18. And that is, I want to start to attune to who my power person was as a person, not as my dad or my mom or my aunt or my brother or my sister, but just as a human being. So the question is asked in step 18, what in general did I perceive my power person's needs to be? What did they need? Did they feel like they always needed someone to be with them? So they, you see the person who, you know, the father or the mother is 80 years old and the son or the daughter is 60 and still living in the house and never gotten married because they perceived their power person needed them control. So what kind of needs did you see your power person had? And they might be things like, the need to control, the need for support. They can be wonderful things, but you just want to do a list of all the things you saw that your power person needed. And then in step 17, we're going to make use of that list by looking at what did my power person do to get those needs met? So let's say they might, the example that I just used. Um, Power person is needy. This child has to be here. I'm in terror and fear if they're not here. And the child is now 25 years old, dating someone, and it looks like they're probably going to get married, which means they're probably going to leave home. What might the power person have done? Oh, they might start chipping away, throwing in nasty little barbs about this person that their son or daughter is dating and what's wrong with them and how miserable life will be with them. And so hacking away at relationships in order to keep control. And then, so what was the behavior? And then you ask yourself the question, was that behavior just and fair? If it was not just and fair, then make notes about what and why. And once again, remember that when you start doing the deeper levels of work, you can open floodgates. And it is absolutely desirable to open the floodgates. You want to remember willingness as it goes on. So make a list of the behaviors. You've got those needs. Now, what did my power person do to get these needs fulfilled? And in each case, ask yourself the question, from where you sat, was that behavior just and fair? If one, maybe this person is now 60s, still living at home with their 80-year-old parent. They've never left home. And all of a sudden they start realizing, gee, that's right. At 3 different times in my life, I was attracted to someone. I started dating. It had potential. And I'm starting to realize that each time my power person would verbally attack them and tear them apart or do things to drive them away from me. So that might be the kind of thing that happened. And was that behavior just and fair? And if not, why not? And so you want to look at each behavior that you identified in step 18 and answer those 3 questions. What was the behavior? Was it just and fair? And why or why was it not just and fair? And then we're going to do a turnaround, of course. And have I ever exhibited any of the needs that I saw my power person had? Are there any similarities? And I want to start honestly listing, especially the ones that match the power person, any of the needs that the power person did. And then I'm going to ask myself the question, once I've honestly listed those things out, what did I do to get my needs met? And were my behaviors just and fair? Now, you'll notice that when one's living in a state of denial, what they'd look at somebody else and say, that's just horrible. They do exactly the same thing. Remember, under stress, we do what our power person did to us that we hated the most, but we have a different label for it. We explain it differently. You know, the example I used earlier when we identified that step, you know, when the power person criticized me, I thought they were being mean. Now, I've never criticized anybody. I just want to help. That would be what the person in denial would say to themselves, ignoring the judgment they had about the power person. So here you want to be brutally honest with yourself. What do I do to get my needs met? And were my behaviors just and fair? Why or why not? And so do that same list that you did from the interaction with your power person. Step 22. We're getting close. I'm not sure we're going to finish it today or not. But anyway, step 22. What did I think or feel? And we'll be posting the latest edited version as soon as we complete this. We'll post it on the website and there'll be a link in the notes. So what did I think or feel I had to do to meet my power person's needs? So I've got that list of needs in step 21 or 20. What are the thoughts or the feelings I had that I had to do to meet my power person's needs? So if my power person was needy and I was supposed to be on a date tonight with this person that I'm dating, and my power person was in their needy stuff, did I feel like I had to give myself up in order to go take care of them? Then I want to let myself become conscious of that. I want to this is all about how you take what the scriptures talk about is take care of the heart. You clean up your own unconscious mind. You can't clean up the door that what's behind the door you're not willing to open. So all of this is about opening that door. That when they said the veil of the temple must be rent in twain, they were not talking about a purple curtain in the church. None of this work has to do with theology, except in as far as there's a power in you that is the presence of love that will help you if you invite that help. But beyond that, it's all where you live. When they said take care of the heart, they're saying you've got to go into your own unconscious because that's where the issues in your life come from. If it's in your unconscious, it's on its way to your life. And it will bite you in the butt if you don't allow yourself to open the veil of your own temple. And that veil is not a purple curtain in a church. That veil is the barrier between the subconscious and the unconscious mind. So that's what we're looking to do with this, is to facilitate and support people being able to open so that there's nothing that ever comes to bite them in the butt. It is totally unnatural. Now, I don't know how many psychiatrists or psychologists would agree with me on this, but I'm going to make it as an absolute categorically true statement. It is unnatural for us to have an unconscious mind. How far separated are we from that natural state? Well, if you talk to psychologists today, they'll tell you that as much as 80, 85, 90, 95, some even estimate as much as 98% of our so-called thinking is unconscious. That's a long way from our natural state. So in step 22, I want to look at that whole list of needs that I've laid out for my power person. And then what were my feelings when I was required to meet their needs? What were the thoughts behind those feelings? I want to open the veil of my own temple and look at that. Ultimately, what we're looking to do is to have a temple, a body-mind unit, where there is no block in any energy whatsoever. Therefore, no disease. Therefore, no death. And then I ask myself the question, the second half of step 22 is, were my actions based in love or fear and hostility? Were they just and fair? So my power person may have had some issues. Chances are, if I wasn't conscious, I have the same issues. And so whatever I've done here will likely be either a replica of or a reaction to a power person dynamic. So I'm acknowledging when perhaps I was not just and fair with my power person, when I did things that were based in fear and or hostility. I pretended or it looked like it was love, but it really wasn't. And then did my power person punish me? Step 23. Now, you can go back to your answers in step 7. If you remember step 7, we asked you to look at some of the behaviors of your power person and make a list of, let me get back to 7 here. So behaviors that I saw my power person do. And you remember we went through that list. There were, what, 75 different behaviors that we went through. To be addicted to the need to be right, to make excuses, avoid emotions, stay in their head, puff self up, rage, threaten, So looking at all of those issues, how did my power person punish me? And bring them down to step 23. And then in step 24, if there was punishment, how did I feel? And what was my emotional response? What thought disorders did I engage in? Were they thought disorders that came out of that? Did I develop in response to that punishment? So when my power person punished me, did I develop thought disorders like, gee, I guess beating people up is a way to win? That'd be a thought disorder based in punishment. Or I hate the fact that I'm being punished and this person is evil. That'd be another thought disorder. So being really honest here, if I was punished, what was my emotional response? I want to be honest and in writing, put down what my emotional response was. And then were there thought disorders that I developed in response to that punishment? And if so, I want to write them down. I want a full list. And then here's kind of the culmination of those last couple of steps. And that is, have I ever done any of the behaviors, including punishment, that I observed my power person using to get me to achieve the goals they had for me? So there were behaviors that I abhorred that my power person did. Now, most people will say, no, I will never be like my father, mother. And they don't believe they are, but the person who knows them is like, you act just like your mother. Gee, you're just like your father. What? Oh no, not me. I would, well, that's because inside this reality structure, inside this hallucination called perception, people relabel things so that they're acceptable. But it's a replicate energy. That's all the human mind can do is replicate whatever was there. What we're looking to do is to delete all of the energetic charge around the content of the mind, make it safe to approach every piece of energy in your own physiology so there is no unconscious. So nothing comes to bite you in the butt. You lend nothing to unconscious dynamics that you lend none of your creative energy so that you attract things that you don't understand how they came to you. The book, Why Is This Happening to Me Again? Basically, the answer to that question is it's happening to you again because you're holding it in your unconscious and you're shining your power into it and you're empowering that particular energy unconsciously. That's why they said take care of the heart, the unconscious, for out of it are the issues in life. We're looking to get it to the point where you're conscious of everything. And if there's something in your energy system that you don't approve of, that you want to be finished with, you forgive it and you get finished with it. You get done with it. Rather than distort behavior and function out of the unconscious dynamics in your mind. So, once again, repeating that brilliant piece of information from Carl Jung, until the unconscious becomes conscious, it will direct your life and you will call it fate. If there's anything in your life you've gone, oh, well, that's just the way life is coming to get me, it's my fate. Stop lying to yourself. It's your unconscious. Literally clean it out, face it and clean it out of your unconscious. And all of life, imagine that we've got a superpower that can lift the world. Let's imagine you're right at the center of the world and life just keeps doing it to you over and over and over again. The instant you change, the instant you confront that unconscious dynamic in yourself, literally, it's like a giant set of hands picks up the whole world, turns it 180 degrees, and you will never see that behavior again, even though it's run your whole life. That's the work of Yeshua. That's what this work is about. And thank you for joining us. It's a delight to share this information with you. We'll have a shorter session tomorrow, and we're just about to the end of this worksheet, and we'll move forward. So thanks for joining us. Tomorrow's pre-recorded. That's right. Jean's got an appointment tomorrow that we need to be to. Thank you for reminding us. So tomorrow, it will be Podbean. If you don't have Podbean, on the occasions where we have to do a pre-recorded show, we have to default to Podbean. If you go to your app store and download the Podbean app, Podbean, and register the way you have with Blog Talk with Needle, then you'll get a notice. The days where we're doing a pre-recorded show, you'll get a text notice that the show will be coming from Podbean. And so that's what will be happening tomorrow. And beyond that, thanks for joining us. We've got, I don't know how many days left. If you're thinking about doing the Why Is This Happening to Me Again intensive and acquiring the bonuses of the free Codependence to Interdependence self-study and the 21 different DVD links we're going to send you free, that's going to expire in, I forget exactly, 7, 8, 9, 10 days. So if you're interested in doing that, drop Jeannie an email, JEANIE at WHYagain.org, and let us know you want to participate, and we'll get it set up so you can. Thanks for joining us.